Hello witches, wizards and those who are yet to receive their Hogwarts school letters, welcome to my Harry Potter kitchen. This is the YouTube series where I'm baking my way through the Harry Potter books, creating recipes every time we find an item of food and drink inside. If you missed last week's recipe where we created Hagrid's Christmas cake for Harry, then make sure you check out the link down below in the description to catch up. And if you're new to the kitchen and you want to see some more Harry Potter inspired recipes, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the notification bell so you get an alert every Magic Monday when there's a brand new recipe. Speaking of which, let's head back into the chamber and see what's next. Okay, so at this point in the book, we hit a bit of a recipe dry spell, which is a real shame. There's no more recipes in chapter 14, 15, 16, or 17. But as a quick recap of what happens, Harry and Ron are in the hut, and then Hagrid gets taken away by Cornelius Fudge to Azkaban while they try to sort everything out. He does give them a clue to go into the forest though, and follow the spiders, which doesn't end too well, but they manage to escape, and then they go down into the chamber with Lockhart and find out that the heir of Slytherin is actually Tom Riddle, who's hiding part of himself inside that diary. Then they do manage to escape his grasp though by defeating the basilisk thanks to Fawkes, so let's head back into chapter 18, Dobby's Reward, to find out what happens next. Okay, so Harry, Ron, Ginny and Lockhart have safely made their way out of the chamber. They're reunited with Mrs. and Mr. Weasley, as well as Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore. Obviously a lot has gone on and it's pretty confusing, so Dumbledore is just walking them through everything, but to their relief, nothing bad is going to happen to Ginny. She's going to be okay. So Dumbledore's asked her to go down to the hospital wing. There's a mention of hot chocolate, which we made earlier in the series, so check out the link down below if you missed that. And I can see our next recipe. You will find that Madame Pomfrey is still awake. She's just giving out the mandrake juice. Now we know from earlier in the book that you need to stew your mandrakes, so at least they're ready. Let's tuck in. If you'd like to recreate this magical mandrake stew with mandrake dumplings, then all of the ingredients, measurements and method are up on my website, bradleybakes.co.uk. The link is down below in the description. So the mandrakes are finally ready to stew, so that means we can prepare a draft to revive all of the students that have been petrified at Hogwarts this year. So we need something that's going to be warming, really hearty and healthy for you too. So it's going to have to be vegetable soup, and today I'm going to make a twist on probably one of the world's most famous vegetable soups, minestrone. It's going to be packed full of vegetables, vitamins, and will get you back on your feet in no time. Then once we've made the base for this easy minestrone soup, I'm also going to make some dumplings in the shape of little mandrakes, just to bring our restorative draft to life. It's really quick and easy, but first we need to prepare those vegetables, so this is what you need to do. The base of our minestrone is going to be our mirepoix, so that is carrots, celery and onions. I'm going to start with my onions by peeling off the skin, and then I'm going to dice that up as finely as possible. For my carrots, I want to peel off the skin and then dice those too. I find it easiest to slice them in half, then slice them into strips, turn them sideways and then dice finely. And it's the same for the celery. Just make sure it's nice and washed and then chop it up into small chunks. Preparing your garlic is easy too. I'm just going to chop those, peel off the skin and then press them through my garlic crusher. A classic minestrone also usually has potato or white beans and pulses. I'm going to use potatoes for this, so all you want to do is give them a good wash, peel off the skin and then chop those into some small cubes. Again, this is nice and easy. I like to slice it into about 1-inch slices, turn them onto their side, cut them one way, twist them around and then cut them the other. To add some green into my minestrone, I'm also going to be using some curly kale as our famous superfood, which you might remember from our polyjuice potion. The link for that is down below in the description. I want to get as many of the leaves as possible, but not the stalks, so I'm just going to chop around them and then add them back into my bowl. The last thing that I need to prepare is my vegetable stock. If you have fresh or homemade vegetable stock, that will work best, but if you don't have any left, you can always use some shop bought. I'm using a stock cube, which I'm just going to dissolve in some hot water. Okay, so that is all of our vegetables prepared. I like to do this first just to make it nice and easy. Once we start cooking them, then we don't have to worry about chopping up anymore. And you can see all of that vibrant colour there as well, which is how you know you're going to be getting so many vitamins from this Mandrake stew. Okay, our next steps are then to sweat off our onions, our celery and our carrots as part of our mirepoix. Then we'll add in the rest of the ingredients and we'll let that simmer for quite a while so we get a real depth of flavour. And while that's cooking, I'll show you how to move on to making your Mandrake dumplings. Get yourself a large saucepan on a medium heat and then add in your oil. Pour in your diced onions, celery and carrots. Stir this through and you want to cook for about 5 minutes until they start to go translucent. Feel free to add in some extra oil if they start to catch or burn. Once those have softened, I'm then going to add in my garlic and my potatoes, stirring it through until well combined. At this point we can then flavour our base, so I've got salt, pepper, mixed herbs, rosemary, thyme and some bay leaves. Stir that through and then I'm then going to add in our liquids. That's the vegetable stock, tomato passata and tomato puree. Mix this through and then once it starts to bubble away you can reduce the heat to a low simmer. Pop a lid on top and then we're going to leave that to simmer away for about half an hour so we get a really rich vegetable soup. Once your broth is ready, you then want to add in your macaroni, so pour that in, give it a good stir and then the lid needs to go back on top for another 20 minutes. Okay, so our minestrone soup is already smelling wonderfully, so we're going to leave that to have its second simmer while we start preparing our mandrakes, which will make this extra magical. As I mentioned, these are going to be dumplings and they're really quick and easy to make. Only 3 key ingredients and then some flavourings. I'll work those together and then we'll model them into our little mandrakes before popping them into our stew along with our kale. Now, the macaroni and the potatoes might soak up some water, so if it's looking a little bit dry, feel free to top it up with a little bit more vegetable stock. Then we'll give it one final simmer and our mandrake stew will be ready. To make your mandrake dumplings, you want to place your flour into a bowl and season it with your salt, pepper and turmeric. This will give it a nice woody flavour while also giving it a more orangey colour like our mandrakes. I'm also going to add in my butter, which I've cubed and then left to come up to room temperature, and work this with my fingers until it forms breadcrumbs. Make a well in the middle and then add in your water. You then want to work this from the middle out until it forms a nice smooth dough. Cut these into even pieces and then it's time to shape our mandrakes. I found the easiest way to do this was roll them into a ball and then flatten them out slightly. Stretch the bottoms and then cut in half to form our legs, and you can twist these round just like the roots of the mandrake. Cut slits in either side and then stretch these out to be our arms. And then stretch out the tops to create a little head. To bring our little mandrake faces to life, I'm going to make a slit at the top and then pry these open to be the stalks where the leaves would sit. And then I'm using some fondant tools to mark out the facial expressions. Feel free to make any you like. Would your mandrakes be happy or sad they're about to be stewed? Once all your mandrakes are formed and the soup is ready, you can take off the lid, place in your kale first and then stir that through before adding your mandrakes on top. You want to make sure they're at least half submerged into the liquid. Then we just need to place the lid back on top and they will take about half an hour for our mandrakes to cook through. Once the mandrake stew is ready, we need to serve it in some generous portions. So I'm going to spoon in the soup base first and then place my mandrake dumplings on top. To really give them a mandrake feel, I'm then going to use some parsley as the leaves on top. Whether you've been petrified or you're just feeling hungry, after this you'll be feeling better in no time. With the mandrakes finally ready to harvest, we've turned them into something even more magical. This hearty vegetable stew will have you feeling better in no time, and these mandrake dumplings are both cute and a little bit weird, but I can't wait to tuck into them. So let me know down below in the comments, would you eat these mandrakes? I certainly would. That's all for this week's recipe, but if you want to see more from my Harry Potter kitchen, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the notification bell, then you'll get an alert every Magic Monday when there's a brand new recipe. I'm off to enjoy my stew, so I'll see you next time. Sorry, Mr. Mandrake. Definitely worth the wait.